Just like SmartBench, safety never takes a day off. So here's a few pointers to help look after you, your team, and SmartBench. Never leave SmartBench unattended. Ask yourself, can you see it? Can you hear it? Can you stop it? In the event of an emergency, it's this button that you need to be pushing here, which will kill the power to the machine and shut it down. If you see an event which might cause an emergency, your options are pushing the interrupt bars or pressing pause on the console. Unlike pushing the E-stop, either of these will just pause SmartBench, which means you can recover your job. Let's talk about fire, especially if you're cutting wood. Remember the fire triangle? This is applicable to all power tools, not just SmartBench. So we've got the fuel, we've got heat, and we've got oxygen. Firstly, fuel. If you're cutting wood, pay particular attention to your moisture content. Just for reference, firewood typically burns at around 20%. So if you've got a low humidity workshop, you want to be particularly careful and consider elevating the moisture content in your environment. Secondly, heat. The cutter generates friction as it cuts through your material, and how you run your job affects how hot it's going to get. Getting your feeds and speeds right is critical to keeping the temperature low. Make sure you're making chips, not dust. Don't ever run blunt cutters because that will increase your friction. Make sure you're getting really good extraction so that that dust doesn't insulate the heat and gets evacuated. And thirdly, oxygen. Now there's not much we can do on this because we want maximum extraction, and the more extraction, the more oxygen going in. So that just means you've got to pay particular attention to the first two items of the fire triangle. If an ember does develop, it can sit on the material, but it's just as likely to get sucked up through the extraction system and reside in the extractor itself, which is why attendance for SmartBench is so important. Make sure you've got the right type of fire extinguisher in the right place for your equipment. It does go without saying that you shouldn't put your hands anywhere near the spindle when it's on with a cutter on it. And on that note, whenever you're doing a job, make sure that your dust shoe guard is in place. If you're cutting anything that generates particulates in the air, you want to be really careful that you're managing that dust. Your two options are making sure that you've got a Class M extraction system, or that anybody entering the environment wears a suitable grade of face masks to prevent them from breathing the dust into their lungs. The spindle and the extractor are very large noise generators, so make sure you're wearing ear defenders. Similarly, if you've ever had dust in your eye, then you know it's worth considering eye protection. Only ever use router bits in your spindle. You don't want to be spinning something up that's not balanced to 20,000 revs per minute. If you haven't seen our cutter video on what happens, you should probably check that out. Also, never use blunt cutters or overheated cutters because they're going to give you some very unexpected results. Watch out for strain injuries. This can be either lifting materials onto SmartBench or actually moving SmartBench around. Each SmartBench subassembly is less than the 25 kilo limit, so on their own they're fine, but take care when you're moving the whole of SmartBench, it's always going to be at least a two-man lift. There's cables that run underneath the machine, so watch out that these don't become a trip hazard, and also watch out for hoses too. It's also important to ensure the cables are always fitted into the strain relief bracket on the lower X-beam. As with any other machinery, don't wear a tie or any loose items of clothing that could potentially get caught up in the spindle. Same goes for long hair, if you've got any. You should also be careful around the labelled pinch points when SmartBench is moving. And finally, the spindle will generate a small electromagnetic field, so if you're wearing a pacemaker and are particularly sensitive, you need to watch out for that. So that brings us to the end of our points on safety. It's not an exhaustive list. You should do your own risk assessments. And if you need any more resources, please check out our knowledge base where we've got more details on the points that we've covered today. Thanks a lot for watching. Look after each other. I'll see you in the next one.